Hello, everyone. So, as you can see, I have transcended my human form and now exist only as digital video. The transformation didn't hurt as much as I thought it would, but it's cool. And since I'm here, I figured I would take this time to talk to you guys about something that we encountered while reading Chapter 5 of The Outsiders last time in class, and that would be a wonderful poem by Robert Frost entitled Nothing Gold Can Stay. So we're going to take a break from our normal routine with the book in order to look at this poem, and we will go over some of the terms and ideas that go along with reading poetry. So after watching this video, I'm hoping that you will all come to class ready to answer a set of questions, which I will show you momentarily. Okay, so first, let's look at a few things that we need to take into consideration when we are reading and attempting to analyze poetry. First thing is be observant. You want to observe before your first reading of the poem and definitely after, in order to fully understand and appreciate a poem. You want to commit to reading it several times. You won't get much out of just one initial reading. So some of the first things we want to look at, obviously, who's the author, the title of the poem, does it hold any significance? Look for any words that you don't know. You may want to look them up. The form of the poem. Um, there are a ton of very technical ideas when it comes to the form and structure of poetry, but really, right now, I just want you guys to look at simple things like the length. Um, does it rhyme? Does it seem to be very structured, or is it just free form and all over the place? So that's what we'll be looking at as far as form. What is happening in the poem? Basically, if this poem had a plot, how would you describe that? How would you explain the plot of this poem? What is happening? Okay, so let's go ahead and jump over to our poem and let's make some of those observations. Um, Even before the first reading, we can look at the author, Robert Frost. Do we know anything about him? Have we read anything of his before? The title of the poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay. So we'll go ahead and do our first initial reading. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Okay, so going back to our checklist of observations, again, any words you don't know, make sure to look them up. It seemed like a fairly structured poem. There was some end rhymes, rhyming at the end of each line. We have the speaker of the poem making some observations about nature, perhaps springtime. Next, we want to move beyond these simpler observations and beyond the surface of the poem and into our interpretation and analysis of the piece. One of the first things to look at is the tone of the speaker. And I want you guys to keep in mind that the author is not always the speaker. Okay? The author may have written this poem from the perspective of someone else. So the author and the speaker are not one and the same. So keep that in mind. Now, the tone is the attitude of the speaker. Remember, not necessarily the author, but the tone is the attitude of the speaker. So you want to ask yourself, was the attitude of the speaker in this poem angry, sad, and melancholy? Was it happy and exuberant, or maybe they were just nonchalantly stating facts. Um, Another thing you can think about here is, who do you imagine the speaker to be? Do you imagine the speaker to be a man, a woman, young or old? And so that's another thing you can ask yourself in regards to the speaker of the poem. Okay, so next here we have diction and imagery. Diction is a word that describes what type of words and phrases the speaker is using, their style. And the imagery is asking, what do these words and phrases make us see? What type of images do they bring to mind? Well, let's flip back to our poem and look at some of the diction and imagery we have. We have gold that stands out in this first line. We have an early flower, kind of giving the sense of that picturesque sunrise. Then down here into the second half of the poem, it maybe gets a little darker. Grief, dawn goes down, nothing can stay. And another thing I want to point out is this sort of contradiction or inconsistency with words right here with dawn going down. Obviously, dawn being sunrise, you have the sun coming up into the sky. So this sort of incongruity here was not an accident. It was very intentional that Robert Frost put that in there. And looking at that and maybe figuring out why that's there could be a key to coming up with some of the meaning and themes of this poem. So basically with imagery, what we're asking ourselves is, what is the author or the speaker trying to make us see? And of course, we'll look for any figurative language that we know that could be in there as well. So let's flip back over to our list here. And lastly, we have meaning and theme. So when trying to figure out the meaning, you definitely want to use all of your previous observations, everything we've talked about up until this point, all of your understanding of the poem so far. Think about the imagery, and really try and experience the poem from the speaker's point of view. And then you can maybe start to get an idea of what the speaker is trying to say. What specific message are they trying to get across? And that will be your meaning of the poem. And from there, we can then derive a more general theme or a lesson that's learned. With the theme, we're looking for, what is this poem saying, or what lesson can be gained from the poem? What type of statement is this poem making about life, about nature, about humanity? Those are the types of things we're looking at when we're talking about theme. Now, having that in mind, I want to flip back to our poem one more time, and I'm going to go through one more reading of it, and I really want you to think about what type of meaning, what type of theme could be derived from this. And of course, keep in mind our themes we've discussed from The Outsiders. Now, I'm not going to give you guys the themes that perhaps I've come up with or general themes for this work, because that's something I'm going to want you guys to do when we meet in class next. So let's go through one more reading of the poem with all of that in mind. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold, her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sinks to grief. So dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. Okay, so next time we come to class, we won't start with journal entries this time. Instead, we'll probably read this poem once together and quickly go over some of the ideas that we've gone over in this video and maybe discuss them as a class a little bit before you each break and start working on completing the worksheet. Now I'm going to do you a favor and show you the questions you'll be working on now so that you can have them in mind. So first, I want you to define hue, subsides, and Eden as far as the terms and words that we may not know. Next, what does the first line, nature's first green is gold, mean? Does it have a very literal meaning, or is it more figurative or symbolic? Third question, what is the speaker's tone, and who do you imagine the speaker to be? Next, what themes do this poem and The Outsiders have in common? Now, rather than just asking you what is the theme of this poem, I want you to make a connection there with The Outsiders, because I'm hoping that a lot of you already have kind of come up with your own themes while reading and thinking about this poem. Next, which characters from The Outsiders would relate to this poem the most? So just keep that in mind. Lastly, why do you think Hinton chose to include this poem in her book? So after you complete this worksheet, we will most likely discuss some of the answers and have you guys share what you came up with. And that's when we'll actually move on to our journal entry and get that done. That will be geared towards the poem this week as well. I will most likely give you a prompt, something along the lines of something you've experienced in your own life that sort of fits the themes that you've come up with for this poem. So again, I hope this video gave you a lot to think about. I hope you come to class with a lot of great ideas and ready to go. Also, remember that the best part about having a teacher who exists purely as digital video is that you can pause, rewind, go back, and look at things in case you need to double check your understanding on something. Okay, so that's it. I will see you guys next time in class.